Another day. Continuing on where we left off in Genesis 7, we have Noah, his family, his wife, his sons' wives, and a whole bunch of animals and creepy things and clean and unclean all hanging out on a boat. They've been floating for 40 days and 40 nights after the rain, and then 150 days after that, due to God needs a certain amount of time to make sure that all life has been purged and removed from this planet. So they're floating around in there 150 days in, waiting for everything to die, and then we move into Genesis 8. Genesis 8:1. And God remembered Noah and every living thing and all animals that were with him in the ark. And God made a made a wind blow over the land, and the waters sank down and abated. So there we go. He remembered Noah. It's not that he forgot. It's that this is like a poetic extra emphasis that, this is the remnant. This is the life that remains. And it's kind of a focus of God at that current juncture in time that he wants to preserve them. And he's looking down and remembering on them, being with them type of thing. Genesis 8:2. And the fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed, and the gushing of the rain of the sky was checked. So there we go. The rain stops, and the fountains of the deep, so the groundwater stopped pouring out. So this could have been going on a little bit ago when it said that the rain stopped. And, well, I guess that's it, right? A lot of it is kind of doubling down. So the rain stopped, the groundwater stopped coming out, and then we get into Genesis 8:3, and the waters receded from the land continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters had diminished. So we have 150 days that they were floating about, and now in 150 days, the water has all diminished. I think that is what it is saying. I could be completely wrong. It might be the other thing that 150 days, everything kind of dies, and then at the end of the 150 days, it all diminishes. But I don't think that's the case. I think this is 150 days of everything dying, and then 150 days that it starts to clean up. I don't know. It's something like that. Either one, the result is the same. All life is now been purged, and then we get to this, Genesis 8:4. And on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, which is believed to be in Armenia. So the water's going down. The ark stops on, a high point, right? So on the top of a mountain, it goes down. Because as the water is draining down, obviously the highest points would be the first ones to be exposed to the fresh air. And then as everything kind of continuously, goes down and recedes into the seas and the oceans, and a lot of the water probably going back into the ground, and probably a lot of it as well going into the sky, right? We're going to have a difference of environmental circumstances after this, that a lot of the water will now be in the sky that will come down in the form of rain. So the environmental circumstance of the world has changed. And I was kind of thinking about it, before, about the polar ice caps and the ice around the planet. That maybe, some of the water was kind of frozen in there. And then the other thing is, too, we don't really have any measure or instance where it talks about the climate and the climate temperature as to what's going on in this ice age. I've always kind of thought of it as kind of like, oh, well, it's probably all nice and wonderful in the world pre-flood, a really good environment, like a sunny day in Hawaii type of thing, that everything was really temperate and nice. But that might not necessarily have been the case. And then when you wipe out all land mass, all trees and animals and everything, that might have had a drastic environmental impact on the planet. And maybe it was extra cold, or there was cold spots and warm spots, and it's really hard to say what the environmental circumstance would have been like, but I don't know. Was it summer when they got picked up, or and on the boat, or was it winter? Did we have seasons before the flood? Did they come after? There's a lot of things to kind of dig in there and kind of think about, and a lot of people have spent their lives studying Genesis, and they have answers for some of these things and hypothesis. It's really hard to prove things, but you can do like a computer model and kind of see how things go. And it's just when you don't have very many details, it's really hard to piece together what the exact environmental circumstance would have been. And in a lot of cases, it doesn't really matter. And we can move on to Genesis 8. What were we on? 8:4, 8:5? Yeah, 17th day, rest. Yeah, okay, so we're at 8:5. Genesis 8:5. And the water continued to diminish until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the highest hills were seen. Okay, so there we go. So they're on the top hill, and the land is starting to become visible. Genesis 8:6. At the end of another 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. 8:7. And he sent forth a raven, which kept going to and fro. The waters were dried up from the land. So it was flying around, and it would come back to the ark, and then it would rest, and then it would go out again and explore. Right? And so that means that there wasn't enough land for the raven to kind of survive outside. So Genesis 8:8. Then he sent forth a dove to see if the waters had decreased from the surface of the ground. 8:9. I guess that was 8:8 before. 8:9. The dove found no resting spot on which to roost, and she returned to him into the ark, for the waters were yet on the surface of the whole land. So he put forth his hand and drew her back into the ark. So I guess the raven left, and maybe he came back or didn't come back. But I think what it's trying to say here is that he's letting these birds go, and if they can't find a way to kind of survive or anything to kind of do out there, that they just come back because there's nothing they can do. And the idea is that once the land is ready, that the birds won't come back. They'll go do their own thing and spread forth and multiply, and they fill the earth with lots of bird fun. Genesis 8:10. He waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove out of the ark. 8:11. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, her mouth was a newly sprouted and freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters subsided from the land. So she came back with evidence that everything was good. I guess it wasn't a go out and come back or doesn't come back. Or maybe that was with the raven. He kind of gave up on the raven back there. But the dove, there's also a lot of symbology with the dove, and we'll get into that later on when it gets into sacrifices and the laws and peace offerings and all that fun stuff. But it definitely has a lot of significance. But that raven there, he's just gone doing his own thing. Doesn't know what's going on, right? He's just living it up. Whereas the dove is much more functional and comes back and gives him a sign that the land is ready again. Genesis 8:12. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, but she did not return to him anymore. So there we go. She's gone, doesn't come back, and he knows that the dove has found her own place and that it is time. Genesis 8:13. In the year 601 of Noah's life, on the first day of the first month, the waters were drying up in the land, and Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the surface of the ground was drying. There we go. It probably was pretty crazy. It's probably just like, the water had to recede, and then it was probably just mud everywhere, and then it took time for all the life to sprout out again in the ground. I guess a lot of seeds, they're probably floating around on the water, and they just kind of settled down, but maybe some of them were kind of buried. Like the water came down so hard that it buried the seeds deeper, and then maybe it's part of the drying process, they got kind of pushed up. I don't know. I don't know how that happened. I'm not an expert in the field of plant life, but it is interesting to think about how everything kind of came back, because it wasn't like Noah planted the seeds for everything. He didn't store all the seeds up for all the life. He wasn't doing some seed bank there. He was just watching, the life kind of grow around him, right? The life just kind of sprouted back up, and we're getting our foliage and trees and plants and shrubberies all going on in their own little business. Genesis 8:14, and on the 22nd day of the second month, the land was entirely dry. Well, there we go. It's dried off. A specific day when that happened too. Seventh day of the second month. Probably a number of symbology right there. 8:15, and God spoke to Noah, saying, 8:16, go forth from the ark, you and your wife, and your sons, and their wives with you. There we go. They're getting kicked out. They're being kicked off the boat. Genesis 8:17, bring forth every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and beasts, and every creepy thing that creepeth on the ground, that they may breed abundantly on the land and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. So there we go. He's taking everything off of there. So I guess those birds that escaped, they're doing their own thing anyway, but all the other birds, maybe there was like ostriches or some sort of old school type of super duper ostriches that, were still on there, or other flying birds, I guess. There maybe some eagles or something. Eagles are usually pretty nice. And what are those other ones, the devourers of the flesh, like the raptors? What are they called? What's the other name for raptor birds? Carrion eaters. What are they called? What's the birds that eat the carrion? Carrion meaning dead flesh. What's that called? Think of it. Vultures. We had the vultures there too. The vultures and the eagles and the condors. The wolves, the dogs, the cats. Although the dogs and wolves are like they're the same thing. Anyway, 8:18. And Noah went forth with his wife and his sons and their wives with them, after being on the ark 1 year and 10 days. So there we go. That would have been a sitcom right there. If someone's ever looking for an idea to make a sitcom, make the Noah the Ark sitcom. Where you just have a bunch of people in a giant boat packed full of animals and just the shenanigans that would ensue. I bet you it was a pretty funny and crazy experience, and probably a little bit smelly too. But if you make a sitcom, no one can smell it. So that's always a good thing. Till we get smell-o-vision, which doesn't quite exist yet. But maybe people in the future listening to this will understand the depth of the smell-o-vision with regards to Noah's Ark, the sitcom. Genesis 8:19. Every beast, creeping thing, every bird, and whatsoever moves on the land went forth by families out of the ark. So there we go. They're all walking out of the ark, in their own little groupings, right? And it's interesting too. God always puts like a lot of extra emphasis on the specifics here, right? That it's so that it can't be confused, can't be conflated, can't be turned into something else, right? It's always very specific in, what is this, beast, creeping thing, bird, right? And then the clean and unclean. It's always specifying that. It's like it really repeated itself a bunch of times over in the last couple of chapters when it regarded itself with the animals. And I think it had to have been done that way for some reason that probably is not necessarily for us reading that right now. That was probably a historical thing. Maybe there was some group of people that, they tried to twist that way back, but because it was spelled out so with so much detail, it makes it a lot harder to try to twist what it says. So it's one of those things that in the Bible that you'll find is that it's got to be consistent with itself, and it likes to repeat things for extra emphasis, and it also adds a level of structural integrity in the word to make it harder to twist it and try to make it say something that it doesn't. But a lot of people, especially with the way that we have these numbers and chapters, it makes it a lot easier for people to try to create these like one word or one line theologies and try to make the Bible say whatever they want. And it's not what the Bible says. It's whatever they come up with at that current juncture at times. So there's definitely a danger at that, but it sure makes it a lot more convenient to read it and to have other people read along with you and have an understanding on what verses you're talking about. And of course, I could go on for hours about that, but we're not going to. We're going to continue on and finish off where we left off. Genesis 8:20. And Noah built an altar to the Lord and took every clean four-footed animal and every clean fowl or bird and offered a burnt offering on the altar. So remember before when it talked about taking, what was it, 7 of the clean and one set of the unclean? If he had to build an altar and he had, did a burnt offering, so that's obviously maybe not necessarily obviously, that would be some sort of sacrifice, right? So he brought extras so that he could sacrifice them at the end, as a way of giving thanks to God. Kind of a way of them having a relationship, and it's kind of like a barbecue. Genesis 8:21, and everybody likes barbecues. 8:21. When the Lord smelled the pleasing odor, the scent of satisfaction to his heart, the Lord said to himself, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the imagination, the strong desire of man's heart is evil and wicked from his youth, and neither will I again smite and destroy every living thing that I have done. So there we go. This is a promise made by God that he's not going to do another great flood to just kind of wipe everything out. And it doesn't specify in the manner as well. So, I mean, he's not going to do something similar either, right? Never again smite and destroy everything that I have done. Genesis 8:22. Well, the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and winter and day and night shall not cease. So maybe we didn't have seasons before this, but now after the flood we have seasons. I'm not really sure, but it is kind of interesting to kind of think about. Anyway, that's the end of Genesis 8. So till next time, stay awesome. Listening to that back, maybe the wind was a convection cooling thing. I don't know. It's interesting to note. Because I guess if you did have a really intense breeze, it could create some degree of ice, and then it could all kind of gather in a singular spot. But who knows?